Hello and welcome to a new episode of the BIMvoice podcast. Today we have with us someone from United States, Gregor Vilkner, or Vilkner. I mispronounced that. Gregor is a full-stack AECO industry specialist with more than 15 years of experience. His work has always been highly technical and innovative in the fields of data-driven facility management, computational design, BIM interoperability, and software automation. Welcome, Gregor.
Well, that was a handful. Hello.
Yes. Well, is that true or not?
Wait, I wrote that.
Yes. You don't even remember when you did that. Yeah. Now it's
Well,
your
they've
turn.
been using the title full stack in the field of software development for a while. So people that know how to craft a front end, build a web page, but also are familiar with IT architecture, database design, interoperability, APIs, right? So I think we are at a point where we have a generation in the AEC industry that really has morphed through like construction background, engineering background, architecture experience, and then even battle around in facility management and observing how it all needs a little more software and how it all needs a little more interoperability, right? So that's thus AECO full stack professional.
Yeah. How did you start? Can you tell us a little bit about how did you start your career in AEC and how you grew up
Sure.
from there?
I did a master's in Germany. I grew up on the Baltic Sea in northeastern Germany. Studied civil engineering at the University of Rostock, and found my way to New York City, to Columbia University, to pursue a PhD in civil engineering. What's funny about that, in my undergraduate, I always tried to stay away from material science because that didn't add up mathematically. That was all like learning stuff by heart. And so I disliked that, but eventually my research got me into using glass as an aggregate in concrete and using high performance polymeric fibers to reinforce and pre-stress them. So it was all about like chemistry and material science, fair enough. And I got stuck in New York, eventually started working at Thornton Tomasetti, which is a structural engineering consultancy, worldwide now, fairly large, lots of really talented staff, and they branched out into fields beyond structural engineering. They were originally known for Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Highway 101, so world-class super high-rise buildings. And I worked in their forensics unit. So we did a lot of forensics engineering, and I, from the first day, basically like loved writing code. Did a lot of interoperability. We used VBA back in the day, doing interoperability between our engineering programs, like SAP, for instance, SAP 2000, AutoCAD, ETABS. And then we also worked with Digital Project. We had a project with Frank Gehry going at the time, and also Tekla, right? And it kind of drives home on the like best tool for the job sort of mantra. So we used to use like Digital Project because of its fantastic geometry engine, and we used Revit because it was the best mousetrap to create drawings and documents. And we used Tekla to do solid modelings because eventually it has to be built in steel and glass. And so that's basically, you master those three, you can go a long way, you know. So eventually I left TT to join Skanska's mission critical unit. We built like enterprise class data centers for eBay, for the Royal Bank of Canada, and then spun out into a startup that focused on software design for facility management and monitoring. So we did a bunch of like monitoring for data centers. So you interoperate with the building management systems, with the building automation systems, and you get time series data on pressures, temperatures, electricity, KWs, KWH. So that helps basically monitor like the end-to-end consumption of energy in a data center, or the end-to-end consumption of like cooling and MEP systems in data centers. So that's basically from engineering through a little bit of construction, facility management, and recently I've I've joined Microdesk. Microdesk is a BIM consultancy. So we basically assist, consult, build tools, do custom software development for a lot of customers. So it's good times.
Interesting. Is there anything that you can openly share about these tools and what their purpose it is?
Sure. I hope I don't misrepresent that. So Microdesk has been around for more than 20 years. Traditionally used to be an Autodesk reseller, has then extended into consulting, training, IT consulting, and through the years always assisted customers with writing custom code, like interoperability or tools to help people be more efficient, right? And I think more recently it has become more blatant that this is actually really needed, because some of the recent additions to Revit, for instance, are sort of clunky, especially when you look at MEP. And there's a lot of investment now into like better modeling for MEP, fabrication, getting all that into the BIM workflow. And the tools are, I don't want to call them half-baked, but they certainly leave a lot of opportunity for building like better ways to do more efficient workflows. So at Microdesk, we have a suite of like superpowers for Revit. It's a suite of tools. It's called BIMRX. So you can Google that. It's a BIM with an RX. RX is short for a subscription, right? If you need a little extra to boost your immune system, you get a subscription for medicine.
Yeah.
And it helps with interoperability, round tripping data and parameter data through Excel. It has fantastic tools and workflows for MEP and fabrication in particular. So you can like mass select a whole bunch of ducts and it'll just place hangers automatically, right? Which don't necessarily are all perfect, you know, but it's like 95%, you're 95% there, and then you just have to do cleanup. So you don't have to like click around a lot. So it's that. And then the other thing that we're doing is a lot of work now with cloud-based BIM, BIM 360 automation, robot and automatic onboarding of users, of projects, doing a lot of like batch operations there, because that's a lot of clicking if you do that manually. And also Forge. I mean, Forge is a fantastic ecosystems of like getting models in the browser and not just looking at them, but actually like developing workflows and data applications, commissioning applications, checking of progress in the field, rebar, stuff like that.
Interesting. What is, from your perspective, what is BIM for you? How do you see BIM?
Yeah, the I in BIM, right? I'm a nerd, right? I like to write code. So the information is the most important thing.
It's only that anyway.
Yeah, in the US, I think in the US, BIM is Revit, and it's a bit unfortunate. I like how in Scandinavia, in where you operate, BIM is IFC, right? BIM has a lot of like, you may as well use interoperability for the I, right? There's more open standards, more data driven. The problem with BIM is that we just kept on like making a mousetrap for drawing generation better. So now Revit is a superior drawing generator, you know?
Yeah.
And my good friend Bob Otani, he works with the guys at TT Core Studio at Norton Tomasetti. He likes to say, because they do very challenging structural engineering, right? With like beams, they go around the curve and stuff like that. Very, very challenging projects. And this is all modeled in 3D, of course. And then they have to like produce the drawings because of government requirements. So he keeps saying his quote for that is like, we have the Lamborghini, but we have to deliver the horse carriage, you know. So
that's so well said.
And it's true, right? It's like you can do a lot of the stuff in virtual, and you should do it in virtual. And yet we keep building tools that make drawings faster, you know. But we build no tools that can read drawings faster. So that's still human.
Yes.
I like Tekla for that. Like the whole like getting interoperability directly into fabrication and construction processes. That's key.
Yes, that's true. And this is a very important thing you mentioned there. Authorities not regulating, not keeping the pace with the industry and with the need of the direction the industry must go.
Yeah, BIM has always been disturbing the peace, right?
Yes. I don't know how it is in US. In Norway, I see big progress from the state companies in this area, and the future looks very promising. I'm really hoping that this is going to be the case for the other countries as well. But outside of, you mentioned fabrication, that Tekla is good for fabrication. And you worked with facility management as well. I see that as the missing link mostly in the projects, in the project requirements. What do you think about that? I'm not very well known with.
No, you're right. It's the crux of the whole thing. Who gets to pay for it, right? And why do we do it, right? And the owners continue to expect a building and a set of keys, and that's it, right? If you have a more sophisticated building, there may be like more requirements around how you deliver a building project. And I like to use, there's two thoughts to that. One, I think there should be a hard deliverable and a soft deliverable, right? The hard deliverable is the building. The soft deliverable is not a DVD with a bunch of PDFs. The soft deliverable is also not a bunch of Excel files, right? The soft deliverable is means and APIs and hooks into data structures that allow you to streamline data into facility management, to get a head start with building facility management. I thought about that just the other day. Right, that's a second thought is constructability versus operability. We have BIM and 3D modeling mostly for the use case clash detection. I think that holds until today. It's shown to be extremely useful, risk reducing. To like if the sprinkler pipes can't fit through the beam, you lock a bunch of BIM guys in a room and they can yell at each other until they figure out how to reroute, right? I mean, you have this happening on a construction site. You stop work, people go home, nobody gets paid, lawsuits start, and you lose half a year, right? It's much more expensive.
Of course.
To not do BIM, right? So that's why we do it, right? So the BIM is driven like to a large extent by the use case constructability. And operability it's not about the connection design, or it's not about the sprinkler pipe going through the beam. It's about where are my assets? What are my assets? What is the metadata of the assets? How is the network of pipes actually running, like air from the outside through ducts to the inlets? Like, how do I measure like air quality? What do I meter? Like, do I meter and sub-meter electricity down to the plug, or down to the level, or down to the room? And why don't we meter water? Like, we have 1 meter at the intake of water for a building, but there's like very, very little like sub-metering for water, for instance, right? And the other thing that you keep seeing when you go to airports and when you go to shopping malls, you have these beautiful, and they're all like done using Illustrator, obviously, right? But you have these beautiful floor plans that clearly communicate, like, if you want to go see a movie, that's the movie. If you want to go to Macy's, there's Macy's. And now you have these things like interactively on large screen touch screens where the kids can like go and they click like to whatever they want to buy, right?
Yeah.
And that is a deliverable that is not on the shopping menu for an owner, but I think it should be. Like your egress plans, you should have like beautiful floor plans, smart floor plans that you can use for operations, right? You go into any facility management system, they have PDFs, they have technical drawings, because drawings are always generated for a technical audience. But they don't have this nice floor plan that actually works with an owner or a not technical person, you know. And that's something that we should put on the menu for deliverables, for a soft deliverable of a construction project.
Why do you think that? Like, why do you think the keys and the DVD with the plans is not enough? Why would that be important for a owner, for an asset manager?
There's studies, right? And we've tried studies. We've tried for like 15 years now or more even to justify the cost of BIM. Like, it's more expensive to do it. Yeah, because before we didn't. So now you need to spend extra money to do it. But there's studies that show how much time is spent of people like digging into closets, pulling out the files, like going to page 225 for like some operations procedure of like, because your power distribution unit or a chiller breaks or something like that. I mean, ultimately, they don't even do that. They just call the number of a maintenance guy, and then the maintenance guy goes in a truck and drives 2 hours, and it's like $5,000 later, the guy hasn't even started working. So automatic, like beep the thing with the barcode, get the operations manual up on screen automatically. I mean, that's 2 hours saved right there. Go on a VR call with a support guy and have a remote assessment first. That's a round trip of a technician saved, right? Yeah. So that's all. I think workflows, they are possible, and they are the future, and they are enabled by us doing a better job, like not hooking it all up and providing them with this HEL 2000, but just by doing a good job, like modeling or scanning, right? If you watch movies, they always have like a team in the truck, and they click a button on the screen, and then they get 3D prints, and they can like exactly see like how to route through all the ducts to get to where the safe is, And it's like, to me, that's like that's the future. But that future has been, like, we've been waiting for that for so long. The technology has been there for a while.
Yeah, that's so true.
Digital twins, right? I mean, like digital twins is like the operations, the equipment, the metadata, the performance data, and of course, the shell.
Yeah. Like you said, the technology is here, and not only the technology, like it is happening. In Norway, have been built now around 100 projects without drawings. That should make you think about the old way of working. They are not losing money. Like you said that a BIM will cost more. Yeah, that's true. But let's look at the big picture. It will cost more to design and prepare better quality documentation, right? Because that is what you get instead of a bunch of DVDs with PDFs, right? But at the same time, because you avoid spending so much time on the site, you save money actually.
Right.
When you look at the entire process.
The cost has to be measured on the life cycle of a project, right?
And
that's why you prefabricate and why you modularize, and yep. No, you're absolutely right.
And when you take into account the life cycle, but what you said there, it's very advanced. And I don't know, I don't have a solution for this. Like, to have all these metrics, you need people that are aware and know how to use these metrics for the better performance of the building. I heard somewhere someone mentioning that the rise of the information managers in our industry, and I think that might be the description of a job for this kind of job, like working people, like civil engineers, maybe working with digital twins, right? To use the live data and make decisions for the best of the users and of the assets, right?
Yeah.
But we
have to figure out the use
that.
cases, we have to figure out the budgeting, and we have to figure out who gets to pay for it. And because every time you introduce something to an established ecosystem that wasn't there before, the immediate thing that is observed is new cost, right? So
yeah.
Our industry is not aware about anything as closely as new cost. Like, that's what we don't want.
Yes, because we look too much into where we are, and we don't want to get our heads out of the sand. That's the problem, because we are too ingrained in our old ways of working. And
I think like what I used to really like, and that's also a while back. There used to be a bridge that fell in a river somewhere in the US, right? And so that's like 2007 or 6 or something like that, interstate bridge. So like a big artery for a local environment that was severely injured and blocked, right? And they were like, oh, so it's going to take us like 2 years to fix this or something like that. And it's one of these like poster childs of an IPD project, right? An integrated project delivery project, where instead the owner, like the locality, were like, look, here's a bucket of money. You guys go figure it out. If you deliver early, you get a bonus. So it was a team approach, right? And there was an incentive of like do well and collaborate and deliver like joint digital assets rather than everybody has their own, right? And fair enough, the bridge opened early. Everybody got a bonus, and it was a successful, like very, very successful project where people are like, oh, we should be doing this all the time, But if you have to write the specs correctly for that to be possible.
Yes, it's everything. It's a loop, and everything comes together here, and everything starts with the requirements, as you said. In order to set better requirements, you need to know that it's possible, and you need to have people that know that. If you, as an owner, you don't know. I don't know if we have too many practices that are helping asset managers or asset owners to understand this. Someone mentioned that in a previous episode that we are not professional anymore. Like we are not working, like I'm talking about consultants, are not working with the best interest of the customer anymore. We are just thinking how to get our time paid, and we don't think on the long run here. And I'm not completely against that. I see there a big gap, but yeah, the owners, I don't know how you do that. The owners are very concerned. They focus on the cost they have right now to build the building, right? They don't think long term. And it's easy to understand that. We as a human race, it's easier to focus on what we have on our plate for the next 2-3 years than on how the project is going to be used in 20 years, right? And how much money we can save there.
So there's a few interesting things there. You see a lot of that with like new apps, things on the phone, right? For people to operate their buildings better, where people can, like on Comfy or something like that, like go on the phone, like, oh, it's too cold, and then it gets bubbled up, and eventually they raise the temperature in the basement. The thought that we had been pursuing for a while is deploy like IIoT and make facility management data systems available, like beyond just the seller of the building, because usually facility management systems like building automation systems are localized, right? There's like no internet access because somebody could hack your building, right? But then fair enough, as of like a while ago, nowadays, most of the systems have internet gateways just for service connection and for fire department access and stuff like that, right? And that kind of like gets you to an idea. So like why, like in addition to or having a bunch of like facility management guys in a building, run a firm, put a bunch of guys in there, and have them operate remotely, like not one building but 200 buildings, and operate this thing like a bit more like a hedge fund. Take a bunch of smart guys and discover arbitrage opportunities, and actually like turn this into a thing where you can make money. Because one of the things that we've been observing is, especially in the case of facility management, even if you have very, very power hungry infrastructure like data centers, nobody gets a bonus if you save 20% energy. Everybody gets fired when the lights go out. So the incentivizing is very backwards, right? And so if you think about like switching it around a little bit like that, and getting to a point where you could take your building, and instead of having a performance contractor who gives you solar panels on the roof, but send off the like portions of the facility management to a company that does that like more algorithmically and more data driven and at scale, right? That's the thing. Like apps on a phone work because it's done at scale. You develop something, you have like 20 million downloads, and here we are, we're rich, right? You do custom software development for our industry. You need a lot of users to make your money back. So that's like one of the ways why writing code in our industry is not necessarily as profitable as writing code that is like business to customer directly, where people just like use an app, and they use it for shopping. And if the app dies, then nobody gets hurt. Like in our industry, if something fails, people get hurt.
Yeah, that's true. It's not. You must be aware of many things when you with what you do. Definitely. Yeah, these are some of the challenges, but things are happening, and a proof of that is what you are doing, what you are working. It's a proof of that, right?
Yeah, I think in the US, where we're seeing something like I think there's a renaissance of engineering. Like engineering and architecture was like for many years not necessarily a like well-respected profession in society. They weren't like big paychecks around and stuff like that. But now there's a lot of investment into the space, a lot of like M&As, right? Autodesk is buying startups left and right. And if you show up at companies nowadays, or the bigger ones at least, like you have to have Grasshopper chops, you have to know Rhino, you have to do Dynamo, you have to like know a little bit of that. So it's not just L space click anymore, you know. So we've thankfully gotten past that, where we draw lines on a canvas instead we're modeling objects.
Yes, programming skills are becoming a requirement for almost all the jobs, the new jobs. So because it's important, it's very difficult to be just yeah, click here and there person nowadays. But maybe for the best companies. But I think this is going to be the case for everybody in the industry, not in many years from now on, I guess. It's necessary. Like you just cannot compete anymore if you just rely on clicks on manual modeling. If we're talking about modeling, for example, because yeah, somebody with a script that can reuse it for a bridge will make the same design you will do in half a year in 2 weeks. So then bye bye business, right? Bye bye project. So it's definitely happening, and it's not only for like, I dare to say that programming skills are becoming like how important the English language is for from a global perspective. Like if you want to get to the next level, you need to do that, right? If you want to get in contact with businesses around the globe, you need to know English or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that you have, I think, especially in our industry, like or in engineering, you need the hybrids, right? The centaurs, right? You need to understand technology and data-driven environments, and you at the same time you need to be an engineer and be a subject matter experts in what you do, whether that's like civil or structural or architecture. I think that's we've observed that in smart facility management that there's been over the years a bunch of startups that had fantastic software, but they didn't know how to get data out of a building, right? So you need to go to the guys that have been doing building automation systems for many years, and you have to be able to work across these disciplines. And I find that very exciting. It's I've always been a fan of interdisciplinary approaches, interdisciplinary teams, right? That makes it all a melting pot.
Yeah. Are you aware about any facility management platforms that might help building owners to harvest some data and, I don't know, make smarter decisions or something? Or
we did develop a platform at my old company, Energy Metrics, as a platform called EM Core and EM Connect. We use that for small unmanaged real estate, right? So we worked with banks, for instance, who have hundreds and hundreds of bank branches, and we just like went to these branches and we put in like little IoT gizmos for like smart thermostats, smart lighting, smart power meters, and then you roll that up into a cloud-based environment where you can do like reporting for a fleet of hundreds of pieces of real estate that typically don't even have a facility management system, right? So you can like create awareness of like who's using more energy or who leaves the light on at night, stuff like that. I mean, I grew up in Germany, right? I mean, you leave a room, you switch off the light. You set back your thermostat at night. You do all these things when you go on vacation, right? And it's funny, in the US, that's just not part of culture, right? So you need to not only like make that quote unquote bad behavior visible, but you just need to just put in a robot to fix it. So you automatically set back set points for thermostats. You automatically switch off the light using sensors and stuff like that, right? So that's one. And then on the bigger scale, if you take like more traditional like dinosaur style facility management systems like IBM Maximo, they all have, now they're all cloud based. They all have APIs. They all integrate with like 3D BIM systems. They're becoming more and more aware of like, oh, maybe we should eat a little IFC so we can visualize stuff better, right?
Yeah.
There's one company, I just don't recall the name, in New York, and they've been working with Class A real estate guys, and they've been deploying like even more modern analytics, like observing when people show up, like knowing what the day of the week is, whether you have a weekend, whether you have a highly loaded building, right? So you take the idea of it works for buildings, and it also works for data centers, for instance, right? By just knowing what the weather should be tomorrow, and whether it's a Sunday or a Tuesday, you should know when to ramp up your mechanical systems in the morning, right? There's a difference between like putting it on at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or not putting it on at all, and that can make like very big differences. And that's where data scientists come in. That's where learning comes in. So that's where the internet comes in, because of course a building should have the weather forecast for tomorrow, right? It's like duh, but you look around, which buildings know what the weather is going to be tomorrow? They have no clue. Just that to finish your thought on facility management system.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And sounds interesting, and we definitely need more, because this can have a huge impact on everything, on the impact on the environment and everything else, right? Like we can use for much longer the resources, and we can reduce a lot the energy consumption. IPDs, you mentioned IPDs, so you said that would be nice to have them on every project. Is not that happening still in the US?
One, I don't think I'm qualified to talk about it, because I haven't worked in that part of the project lifecycle in a while.
From the rumors, let's say from rumors.
Well, there's still like nowadays you have like collaboration platforms like BIM 360, and where firms were very, very aware of what the deliverables were, and you always opt for PDFs over BIM models because of legal exposure, right? Now you're very aware of like who gets access to what in a BIM 360 environment. You have like a BIM 360 environment for design, but then you have different collaboration platforms for construction, and no smooth handover. So it's still this like walled garden building where Autodesk in the US is now trying to make BIM 360 part of construction, right? But then you take Oracle and Primavera and those guys, and they're like, oh no, we're already here, you know. Like, so they need to build bridges, but instead they're all talking monopoly, and how can we like not necessarily be open, right? Another thing is that was with the BIM 360 thing is the way these platforms make money. I think there is a flaw in the thinking there, because onboarding users means adding users, means adding subscriptions, means adding like $9 a month per user or $19 a month per user. Like those platforms, the cost adds up. And whoever like sits on the budgets is very aware of who should and who should not have access, right? At the same time, I mean, you want to do it right. It should be easy and free to have more people collaborate in a digital platform, and you should measure what actually accrues cost. So like Autodesk is not, they're not making more or less money if they have more or less users. They make more or less money in cost in their cloud environment if they have more data traffic. So figure out how you want to sell your product, like measure like by data transfer, or measure by gigabytes used. But by all means, let people onboard 50 users without extra cost, because if you had 50 more users in your collaboration platform, then 50 more people would be doing it without using like Dropbox illegally on the side, you know? I mean, there's a lot of dark IT where people just use something else because it just works better, it's more efficient, it's cheaper, and the boss says, no, you can't have access to BIM 360.
Yeah.
That was very unfiltered, I apologize.
It's fine. While we are here, what's your take on open source actually for AAC?
I like it a lot, because there is so much depth in IT and software infrastructure nowadays. It's like Microsoft is open sourcing all of .NET, Visual Studio, code is there's so much open source now, because you can't just like copying and stealing code doesn't really work like that anymore. It's like you have like BIM beats. We were really fascinated with BIM beats and what Bad Monkeys and Conrad and the guys did. That runs on Elasticsearch on the Elk stack, Kibana, right? That is a completely like Apache licensed open source thing. But to be able to set it up is you need to put it on Linux servers, you need to maintain it, you need to do your user management, you have to do security, you have to do all these things. And that's where the economy is in like how to set stuff up and operate it and be efficient and not having to babysit Linux servers. So instead buying it as a service. So I think open source, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Ian Keel's like hyper platform is, there's a lot of open source there. There's a lot of like open source around IFC. I still wonder why there's no open source like supported IFC parser and DLLs. Everybody's still like running their own engines there. I think there's a lot of ways. For instance, like Autodesk having joined like some open source alliance recently. Like they could do a lot of good by shepherding and taking like a little mentorial role into having like open SDKs and DLLs for IFC, for open SDKs and DLLs for Kobe, for instance, right? I mean, if you have a standard that is a standard that has been a standard for 20 years and it's written up in 1,000 pages of PDF and there's an Excel table, that's not open BIM. Like you need to have, libraries and code and GitHub repositories, and that's something that is still lacking, I think.
Yeah. Can you go a little bit more into detail about what you said about Bad Monkeys, that their solution, or what is that? A platform? They develop a platform?
Gotta love the Bad Monkeys. It's a great name. They're hardcore. They're distributed. They're remote. They're all over the place. I think their CEO is actually in Scandinavia, right? He posted a fantastic hiring video on LinkedIn the other day.
Yes.
They productized a thing called BIM beats, right? So if you monitor PCs, right? If we go back for a minute, if you have a plant, if you have a processing plant, you have sensors, right? You have plant engineers. They know what kind of thing they need to measure the output, to measure the efficiency, and it's always been driven by sensors in an industrial IoT, right? If you have knowledge companies like financial companies, traders, they have very expensive staff, they have very expensive IT, expensive computers, and they also want to kind of have an idea of like how the ship's running. Like, am I spending too much on computers? Like my users keep asking for bigger computers. Like, should I yield? Do they have a point? And the same thing we observe in our industry with BIM operators, right? It's like BIM machines are expensive PCs. The users always complain that they need a bigger one, and licenses are also expensive. So we basically took the same monitoring paradigm that has been used in other industries very successfully for many years now, and that's the ELK stack, right? ELK is Elasticsearch, Kibana, which allows you to get telemetry from PCs on the fly, harvest them in databases, and then bubble them up as dashboards so you can see like what the utilization of your workforce and the utilization of your like laptops is, for instance, right? So you have the same thing in BIM where you could say, like when somebody starts like Revit, like what versions of Revit do you use? Like do my peeps work at night and on the weekends, right? If you type project files through network drives and BIM 360 signatures to projects, you could actually measure how much time is actually spent in projects, and that could help with like billing and estimating and finding out if the price you're selling for your hours, if those hours are actually honestly accrued or not. And BIM Beats is a suite of edge software pieces that sit in our software that we use in the AC industry to measure usage. So it sits in Rhino, it does Grasshopper, it sits in Revit, it sits with Dynamo, with BIM 360, with Glue. And I think it's a visibility into performance metrics that our industry is lacking. I think that's needed.
Yeah, and not only that, mostly when I was referring about softwares, open source for AAC, I was thinking mostly about not stacks, because mainly this what you mentioned, like Visual Studio Code and the other things are like for IT generally, right? It's not only for AAC. I was thinking mostly like for more custom tailored solutions, especially for us, like alternatives for Revit, open source alternative for Revit, or for facility management, some open source solutions or something from this point of view. But the BIM bits is really nice. Sounds really nice. I will definitely take a closer look into that.
We have started doing something like that. If you, for instance, I had worked on a GraphQL server endpoint for Revit, right? And it works. I have a prototype, but I don't have the time to build it out to cover all the functionality of the Revit API. So we have that open source, for instance, or Forge as a viewer. If you wanna code against Forge, it's all like JavaScript, right? So we have like a lot of our developers, they like C# and using Visual Studio, you know. So we have a wrapper that allows you to use Forge in Blazor projects and build websites using C#. So that's open source. So they're basically projects that are seeds. And if you use more, you could add more functionality, right? And I think like a lot of open source projects are grown organically like that. It's little use cases that are given to a community, and then the community can bolt on features as they need it.
Yeah, they are very important. It's very important to have alternatives. In IT, open source, it's as the core of IT.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to give these approaches time, right? I mean, you look at what is big, successful open source IT infrastructure now, like Elasticsearch, like Linux. I mean, those things have grown with like use case at a time over 10 years, over 20 years, you know.
Yeah.
So, and they also have found lots and lots of usage, which kept momentum high, right? So, whereas if you start a facility management system open source now, I mean, you need a lot of users to have momentum high, and then you need a lot of developers to contribute, and they all need to like eat lunch. So you have to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, no, that's true. And like you said, it's difficult to generate money when you own like you cannot sell to outside any services or something from.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier with the owners, right? And that's the thing that I just remembered I wanted to bring up earlier.
Yeah.
You know, you go into like any AEC company nowadays, there's like a BIM execution plan, right? So if you're an owner and you have a fancy new flagship building that you want to build, and you work with your architects and your engineers, and it's quite okay now to say like, hey, what's your BIM strategy? How do you do it? Where's your BIM execution plan? Because it's like the marriage contract. You know, this is where you write on paper like what you promise to deliver, a little more detailed than just saying like, oh yeah, we're going to do BIM. And I think you can do the same thing from an owner's perspective now, also about like a smart building plan. So if you have your building and 5 years later you have some fancy data science platform on the web that can do wonders with your building, but they need access to your data. Right now they go to your facility, like to your building automation systems guy and the Johnson Controls guy or the Siemens guy. Any one of those guys is going to go like, no, can't have access to the data because it's not built in the contract. It's not monetized. All these APIs are proprietary. But if there was a plan where the building automation team has to fill out a smart building plan document where they say like, okay, if somebody shows up in 5 years to offer data services on a building, they can go use this API, they can use that endpoint, and yes, our backnet or our Modbus is going to be open for them. If that was in place, it would actually make a lot of like smart facility management platforms and web-based applications. It would give them an easier time to do business in the building space. Currently, like the biggest hurdle doing smart buildings is getting access to the data.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, that's intriguing.
It's also something you could template it, and then people could just like pick up like the standard not the BIM execution plan, but the smart building execution plan, and they could take the template and wiggle around a little bit with some customizations. And then when the building automation teams bid for the work, they have to fill that out. And if they don't want to fill it out, they can't bid.
Yeah, I think this might be really interesting and should be for smart asset owners. Should be definitely to get the most out of their projects. But we are struggling with building with BIM execution plans to be taken seriously. Like yeah, a lot of people are using them, but not a lot of people are conforming to them, or not deliver according to them, or try
Is
to.
it because it's too bureaucratic, right? It's just a lot of small print and nobody
Exactly,
reads it. And the real answer is culture, right? Where people just do it the way they do it because that's the way they do it, right?
Yes, but that nonetheless, that is a very good proposal. Actually, I don't know if this is something that is talking about in ISO 9650, but there are many requirements or proposal. BIM execution plan, asset information requirement. Maybe there, I will look into this. Maybe it's covered by that, because I
Right.
think there is something. There is a requirement for asset management, but I don't know if that says something about the smart and about data requirements.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that's that makes completely sense. And
well, best branding in the space is haystack, right? Like because it is a haystack. It's highly unstructured. It's a big pile of fluff that you never need. Just this one little piece every once in a while.
Yeah. You've been invited to a conference not long ago. What have you been talking about there?
That was the AEC Technology Conference. It's run and has been organized since like the 8th or 9th time now by TTs like Thornton Tomasetti's Core Studio. They run a bunch of workshops on Friday. They always had fantastic support from like the McNeil team, for instance. So there's Rhino Inside, there's like Ladybug and Grasshopper guys, there is a whole bunch of energy modeling. It's filled up with nerds. It's a nerd fest, if you want my like unfiltered opinion on that. And then they have a hackathon on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and a symposium with like very, very good quality speakers. Always has been like very good on Monday. And I think it's still gaining traction. It's becoming more and more apparent that it's an important conference on the calendar for building the EEC technologists. I was participating a couple of times before as a speaker, and this year I gave a lightning workshop on Saturday as part of the hackathon. So I had a Zoom going. It was a bunch of guys, and we talked about the GraphQL open source endpoint for Revit. And that was good fun, actually.
Cool. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes then. You have it on GitHub, or?
There's a link on GitHub. I can point to that. We started an open source GitHub account for Microdesk for some of our experimental things, and that's BIMRX lab. So I'll send you the link to that.
Yeah. You started as a civil engineer, and now you work mostly with software development. Do you have any advice for any other civil engineers or engineers that are interested about this path?
Yeah, I think in our industry, I think it's definitely easier to come in as an architect or an engineer and then move into software development. I think it's harder to come in as a trained computer scientist and get warm feelings from engineers and architects. The other thing that is more and more apparent is that colleges, I mean, nowadays even high schools. I mean, my older son he's writing code, right? So he's not even in high school yet. I think my advice would be, if you can pick up coding classes in college, especially if they're offered through your programs, you should definitely take advantage of that. The question on whether you should do C# or JavaScript or Python, I think the answer to that is like, well, all of the above, because you know an algorithm when you see one. It doesn't matter what language it's written in, and there are certain ecosystems that favor certain programming languages. So nowadays, you talk about like Rhino and Grasshopper. You want to be a little bit on the Python side, I think. If you want to do machine learning and AI, all that stuff is open source and all that stuff is in Python.
Yeah.
If you want to do web development, maybe a little more JavaScript, and if you want to build tools for Revit, for instance, there's no way around learning C# and using Visual Studio.
Yeah.
I personally, I've been I started out in VBA, but I'm a C# guy. I like the .NET framework. I like C#, and it allows me to do anything I want, right? So, but I'm quite aware that ecosystem is lacking of a lot of the stuff that's happening in the space of machine learning and AI. And what we saw at the AEC Technology Symposium at the hackathon, and they were reflecting on that in the keynotes after that, is that what used to be a lot of projects on hackathons around like viewers on the web and interoperability, nowadays 90% of the teams or the projects pick ML and AI applications as their hackathon targets. So they're all keenly aware that that's the future. That genie does not go back in the bottle, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. But what about career perspectives? Like, what kind of jobs? Leave aside the scripting for parametric design. What kind of jobs are there for engineers that might get programming skills and would like to move into such a role?
I'll have to punt on that. I don't know. I haven't seen that in too long. But I know the larger, more sophisticated consultancies, they've always wanted like nice degrees from nice schools, and now you also want to have like IT skills on your resume. I think that's becoming, as you said, more and more expected. But I can't vouch for that.
Yeah.
I do certainly notice though that there is I'm turned out to be one of the older ones by now. So there's a lot of like young kids with crazy good ideas, and lots and lots of them. So it's happening, I think. Took a generation, but it's happening.
What do you think should we do to get us to the next level regarding with the progress of our industry, with the BIM adoption?
Owners have to put money into sustainability projects. They shouldn't just talk about it. They have to put money into it. They have to fund projects. It takes balls to fund a project on sustainability, because and by now we have models that predict like really good ROIs. The return of investment is short. It makes sense. It's the right thing to do. It's a leadership play, right? And our engineering and architecture companies, they have also to invest, put the money where their mouth is, and not just talk about technology and BIM, but enable people to actually have careers on those tracks, right? And maybe a little critical, but like most engineering firms, architecture firms are seniority driven, right? So I mean, I used to give classes on BIM stuff more than 10 years ago, and there were all these old guys in the audience that needed to get like learning credits to keep their PEs alive, you know. And we used to do like show of hands, like who's doing BIM, you know, who's planning to do BIM, and who's going to just wait and retire before they have to do BIM. And we always had a good chunk of hands up for like, yeah, they just want to wait it out, right? But if you're in a leadership position at a company, you can't afford to sit it out. Because you lose talent. There's a lot of turnover of talent. If you know your chops, so those people are in demand, right? And I think what we used to have is, and that is also thankfully changing now. I think what we used to have is you, like, let's say in an engineering company, you start as an engineer, you become a project engineer, you run a little team with engineers, and then you get like, eventually you become a VP, a partner, and that's basically your typical career track for like with good leadership material like engineers. So now you don't have similar leadership tracks for people that build tools and write code. They're still perceived as like assets. They have like they're somewhere in a corner, and only like few companies actually enable them to run teams, to like have a clear path into senior leadership of a company. Some companies have that. I think most don't, but more should, right? If you're the geek at a company, the career track, like the highest level you could ever get to was like BIM manager, or God forbid, like not even CTO, because the BIM manager is still not quite the same as the guy who runs IT, right? But there is information management and technology management, that those are leadership positions that need to be filled.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are still many companies that don't have any other IT guys than the maintenance guys, and to buy computers and set them up. So
yeah, I'm quite passionate about that. The way IT guys operate, and that's their job. Their job is to make sure that it's safe, that nobody can break in. Cybersecurity is more important than nice screens. So you have your Office 365. And you have your SharePoint, and you like, all right, everybody, we're going to use SharePoint, right? And SharePoint just it stinks. It's not intuitive. It looks ugly. People just hate it, right? And then every once in a while, you come across a SharePoint that just looks beautiful and it's intuitive, and people love it, because somebody actually took the time to set it up right. It's like Russian soup, it needs to be cooked right, and that's not something that IT teams would do. It's something where you need to have a communications team or visual designers, and they need to be allowed to play with your SharePoint, and then they can make it beautiful for everybody. But it takes a team to do that.
yeah,
but I think also there we're kind of getting there slowly.
yeah, that's good to hear, because yeah, it's very important. It's very important. It's much easier to work with good and nice tools that are intuitive, and someone thought about them and designed them in a way that you can do your job in the best way, right? Is there anything else you would like to mention that we maybe did not touch? We talked too much about negative things. Let's finish on a positive note.
No, we did. Did we? Was it negative? Was it? Yeah, was it a bit critical? Like what? I've been excited. Like PyRevit is awesome, right? We've been working with a team in Paris. You look them up. Orchestra with a K. They do. It's like GitHub, but for Dynamo and Grasshopper. So it's beautifully designed. And it's basically for version control of these scripts, right? Because when you look at architecture and engineering firms, like everybody's doing Dynamo, everybody's doing Grasshopper scripts, but they sit on folks' computers, and leadership has slowly woken up to the idea there's a lot of knowledge in all these scripts, and how do you do knowledge transfer? How do you build like libraries? How do you standardize stuff? How do you make sure that the same thing doesn't get invented twice, right? I mean, the running joke is that every Grasshopper script that could be built has been built before. You just have to be able to find it, right? So there is a need for a platform that helps with that, and the Orchestra guys did a fantastic job on that. We were excited about that. We were very excited about like the whole BIM Beats idea, like dashboards for usage of IT systems. And I think I've been a fan of the concept of like consuming like digital exhaust. Like when we operate with computers, like we click and we leave trail, right? And you don't want to monitor people like Big Brother, but you want to monitor the trail, and because there's so much like data and knowledge in there, which can bring a lot more insights into how we run our companies and what we spend our time on.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice. Orchestra, you said, right?
Yeah. The other thing I'm excited about is Forge and the way like the latest generations of CATIA that basically bring the complete project execution, not as files and models, but as like virtual space. Like imagine you're a company and you get a job to participate on a job, and the only way to participate with the team is to interact with virtual models, not files, models, like directly, like on the patient if you want. So I think that's we're getting there, and that's I think really exciting. And with large infrastructure projects, airports, like they already employ like stuff like that. And if that makes it into more mainstream applications, that would be wonderful.
Isn't there anything else open source alternative to Forge?
I don't know. Unreal Engine, Unity, they're not open source, but they certainly work on PlayStation. So that's another thing, of course, that I think we're going to see. There's going to be a bit of a disruption of that space from the big virtual environment guys. I don't know whether you saw it, like half a year ago, they had the latest round of NVIDIA keynotes and the latest round of like demos for the new Unreal Engine. Like they if they can do real-time like tracing of light rays, billions of them, right? And if they can do sound like simulated, if they can do gravity and birds flock around autonomously simulated, the applications from these techniques and in our industry, I think are fantastic. It's like we've been saying with MEP and structural engineering that like, oh, you need to model it right, and you need a big computer, and you need to do your finite element thing, and then it takes a while to solve. I mean, if you look at the investment that has happened in virtual reality engines for gaming, for instance, we're running out of excuses. Like, why can't we stream structural engineering in real time, in a virtual environment? I think that's happening sooner than we would think, I think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It should be like we have these huge environments, right, that are run on these game engines, right?
Yeah, or you take like what the Microsoft guys did with Flight Simulator, I mean, to mesh that up with real maps, real world, real weather, real time, like being able to fly into a hurricane that happens in Flight Simulator. I mean, that's awesome. So how many more steps until we can put our buildings into that world?
Yeah, that sounds exciting enough. Thank you for this, and thank you
Petru,
for accepting the invitation and joining me.
Of course, it's my pleasure.